In the 16th and 17th centuries, the Spanish Empire rose to become one of the greatest and most powerful empires the world had ever seen. At its peak under King Philip II in the late 1500s, the Spanish Empire spanned nearly 12 million square kilometers across Europe, the Americas, Africa, and Asia. It was the first empire on which the sun truly never set, with territories and colonies spanning multiple continents and oceans. The immense wealth and resources extracted from its colonies abroad allowed Spain to become the preeminent military and economic power in Europe for over a century. The origins of the Spanish Empire trace back to the union of the Crown of Castile and the Crown of Aragon in 1469 through the marriage of Ferdinand II of Aragon and Isabella I of Castile. This dynastic union brought together the two strongest Christian kingdoms in Iberia after the Reconquista, the centuries-long conflict to drive out the Moorish rulers. The newly united Spanish kingdom then sponsored the voyages of Christopher Columbus in 1492, setting in motion the colonization of the New World and overseas expansion that made Spain the first truly global empire. The conquests of the Americas by Spanish conquistadors like Hernán Cortés and Francisco Pizarro in the early 16th century brought vast new territories under Spanish control. The riches plundered from the Aztec and Inca empires, including immense quantities of gold and silver, funded the Spanish monarchy and its military campaigns in Europe. However, the Spanish did not simply extract resources from the Americas, they established permanent colonial rule, bringing Spanish language, culture, Catholicism, and systems of government and economics to the new territories. Over the next 2 centuries, the Spanish colonized and settled much of the Caribbean, Mexico, Central America, and large parts of North and South America. In addition to its American colonies, Spain also maintained territories around the Mediterranean, including portions of Italy, the Low Countries, and, for a time, parts of modern-day Germany and France. Its acquisition of the Portuguese crown between 1580 to 1640 further expanded the Spanish Empire by granting control over the Portuguese territories in Brazil, Angola, and the East Indies. At its height, the economic and military power of Imperial Spain was unmatched in Europe. The influx of precious metals, crops like sugar, and other resources from its overseas colonies fueled Spanish economic growth. Between 1500 and 1650, over 80% of the silver and gold entering Europe came from Spanish colonies in the New World. This immense wealth allowed the Spanish crown to raise and maintain large armies and naval forces to wage war and defend its vast empire. Under King Philip II, who reigned from 1556 to 1598, the Spanish military reached its zenith. Ruling over a polyglot empire, Philip spoke multiple languages and maintained a complex bureaucracy to administer Spain's widespread territories. Philip's Spanish tercios, combined arms military formations consisting of cavalry, artillery, and formidable Spanish infantry armed with pikes and arquebuses, were among the most advanced and feared fighting forces in the world at the time. Their victories at St. Quentin, 1557, and Gravelines, 1558, during the Italian Wars secured Spanish control over territories in Italy. However, Philip's ambitions were repeatedly checked by conflicts with the emerging maritime powers of England and the Dutch Republic. The English defeated the supposedly invincible Spanish Armada in 1588, establishing British naval dominance. An 80-year struggle known as the Dutch Revolt, 1568 to 1648, eventually saw the Northern Netherlands win its independence as the Dutch Republic after defying overwhelming Spanish military force. These losses marked the beginning of Spain's imperial decline. The immense territories and resources under Spanish control came at a tremendous human cost. Devastating epidemics of diseases like smallpox decimated the indigenous populations of the Americas after first contact, with the death toll reaching into the tens of millions. Indigenous peoples were often brutally subjugated and enslaved by their Spanish overlords in mining operations, plantations, and other enforced labor camps known as encomiendas or mitas. However, Spain did inadvertently contribute to the global exchange of crops, livestock, peoples, and knowledge between the Eastern and Western hemispheres in what is known as the Columbian Exchange. As a fiercely Catholic power, the Spanish monarchy and colonists sought to convert the native populations of their conquered territories to Christianity and spread Catholicism around the globe. Catholic missionaries like Unification established missions and converted many Native Americans to their faith. The Spanish Inquisition was also established in Spain's American territories to root out any remnants of ancestral native religious practices or beliefs among the indigenous converts. Spanish colonial rule also brought new systems of law, government, and economic structures based on Western European models. Precious metal mining operations, agriculture plantations, and trade routes emerged to bring New World resources and crops like tobacco, sugar, gold, and silver back to Spain and Europe. Major cities like Mexico City, Havana, Manila, Lima, and others became bustling centers of trade and colonial administration. Despite its power and far-reaching impact, the Spanish imperial model proved unsustainable over the long run. As the costs of defending its empire from other rising European powers grew, Spanish military expenditures became ruinous. Economic issues like inflation from an influx of New World precious metals, lack of industrial development, and population decline plagued the homeland. By the late 17th century, the once mighty Spanish Empire began a long, steady decline as other powers like France, Britain, and the Netherlands rose to challenge and eventually surpass Spanish imperial dominance. The legacy and impact of the Spanish Empire remains evident across the globe. The unparalleled geographic expanse of the Spanish colonial domain spread Hispanic language and cultural influences across multiple continents, influencing everything from religion to food, architecture, and the arts. The majority of modern-day Spain's former colonies achieved independence in the 19th century after revolutionary movements and wars, starting with the United States. However, Spanish cultural and linguistic heritage remains strongly embedded in many of these newly independent nations, comprising over 490 million native Spanish speakers around the world. In fact, Mexico today has more native Spanish speakers than Spain itself. Spain's global colonization efforts in the 16th–18th centuries changed the course of world history in innumerable ways, for better or worse. It paved the way for European conquest and imperial control over much of the Western Hemisphere. Technological innovations, ideas, crops, peoples, and beyond crossed the Atlantic Ocean and Pacific Ocean in both directions thanks to the establishment of the first truly global trade routes and colonial empires. While the human costs of colonization were catastrophic, especially for indigenous populations, the Spanish Empire irrevocably linked the Eastern and Western hemispheres into a single interconnected world. No empire in the 16th or 17th centuries could match the geographic scope or project the immense power and influence of Imperial Spain. It was the first globalized state in human history, a real-life superpower, that dominated economics, warfare, and overseas colonization for over 150 years before its long decline began in the late 1600s. Although its imperial ambitions ultimately proved beyond its capabilities to maintain, the far-reaching legacy of the Spanish Empire forever changed the world and continues to shape the modern era even centuries later. The Spanish Empire's status as the world's first superpower was a result of its remarkable rise, expansion, achievements, and eventual decline. From exploration and conquest to cultural exchange and scientific discoveries, the Spanish Empire's impact on the modern world is undeniable. While the empire may have faded into history, its legacy endures in the languages, cultures, and traditions of nations shaped by Spain's historical influence.